Fluent Flow Podcast, Episode 62. Learn how to talk about yourself in English.
Welcome to the debate. So today we're focusing on a really core tension in early English language pedagogy. We're looking at material designed for absolute beginners and specifically at this strategic choice to have the dialogue spoken devagar e con calma, slowly and calmly.
Right, and that instruction it's really the heart of the matter, isn't it? The whole design goal is maximum clarity, ease of processing.
Exactly. And the significance here is figuring out the long-term pedagogical trade-off. So our central question is this: does this highly structured, slow, simplified dialogue provide a superior foundation for building confidence and vocabulary? Or does its inherent artificiality create, unrealistic expectations that actually get in the way of transitioning to natural fluency? I'll be arguing that this structure and this deliberate pacing is essential scaffolding.
And I'm coming at this from a slightly different angle. While that goal of building confidence is, of course, admirable, I'm going to argue that this hyper-controlled environment, while it might be excellent for initial vocabulary recall, it just doesn't sufficiently prepare the learner for the actual speed, the ambiguity, and the crucial features of connected speech and real discourse. It risks teaching a form of English that, frankly, doesn't exist outside the classroom.
Well, where I'd like to start is with the sheer systematic completeness of the material. I mean, if you look at the comprehensive inventory that's covered by the two speakers, Paul and Emily, in this one single exchange, they systematically cover name, place, age, occupation, family structure, pets, and quite extensive personal preferences, everything from pizza to detailed dislikes. It's an exhaustive list, and it ensures the beginner immediately masters a full set of fundamental, repeatable structures. Things like my name is, I am from, I live in.
It is definitely thorough. I won't dispute the breadth of the content.
But the structure itself is so pedagogically sound because it defines differences very clearly. A dog person versus a cat person, a small house versus an apartment. This is really gentle training in comparative language, and it's integrated in a non-threatening way by framing the whole thing as an invitation to share a little bit about you instead of some kind of memory test. The material really does achieve its goal of being easy and fun. And that initial low-anxiety confidence, well, that's the most important resource for any beginner.
That's a strong defense of the confidence-building aspect, I'll give you that. But we really need to talk about the cost of that confidence when it comes to an actual practical conversation. The limitation isn't just the content, it's the structure. I mean, the hosts of the material themselves point out that the entire sequence, name, place, age, job, family, pets, hobbies, it all becomes a very, very long answer to a simple prompt like, tell me about yourself.
It's comprehensive, yes, but I wouldn't call it unnaturally long for a scripted learning exercise.
But real-world conversation doesn't operate on a rigid checklist. It relies on complex shifts, on incomplete sentences, and a variability that's based on the listener's immediate engagement. Here, the transitions are so formulaic and explicit. Okay, so we have name, place, age, and job. What else can we talk about? This approach, it fails to teach the student how to handle an awkward silence or how to shift topics organically based on a shared interest. It trains them to deliver data sequentially, which it just leaves them completely unprepared when a native speaker inevitably diverges from that script.
I do acknowledge your concern about the shock of real-world speed, but I think you're misjudging the primary purpose of that slow pacing. Let's look closely at what that deliberate speed actually facilitates. The explicit instruction to speak slowly and calmly is foundational scaffolding. This pace allows for crystal clear articulation, which is absolutely necessary to establish solid phonetic foundations. It ensures the learner can successfully model specific vocabulary and even spelling, like that really clear pronunciation of P-A-U-L.
I understand the goal of clarity. I do. But for long-term acquisition, that same clarity can become a hindrance. While yes, clarity is achieved, this pace actively avoids the most critical features of natural rapid spoken English. Specifically, things like contractions, elisions, and connected speech. The learner is being trained to hear segmentation, these distinct word boundaries, when in reality, speech is highly connected.
Okay, so could you define that for us? What exactly is the learner missing by focusing purely on that clear segmentation?
Certainly. Well, connected speech is where words just blend together. For example, in the dialogue, Emily says, "My mother is a teacher too." The words are perfectly distinct, separated, and all the sounds are fully pronounced.
Right.
But a native speaker in a typical conversation would almost certainly use a contraction, "My mother's a teacher too." Or, depending on their dialect, they might even drop or change sounds. We call that elision.
Elision.
Yes, a dropped or blurred sound. Think of how going to becomes gonna or want to becomes wanna. The learner who's only been trained on segmented, slow dialogue is going to hear gonna and not recognize going to. They're training to hear these clear word boundaries that simply don't exist at speed. They're learning an artificially segmented version of the language, and that is a fast track to major listening comprehension issues down the line. That phonetic foundation you prize so much is actually a false foundation for the real dynamics of the language.
I see the challenge of connected speech. I do. But I would argue that you need that segmented clarity first. You have to ensure the learner isn't struggling with both new grammatical concepts and rapid, blurred articulation all at the same time. The initial goal is accurate mimicry of base sounds and grammatical structure. We can introduce contractions and elisions later, once the cognitive load of just acquiring vocabulary has been reduced. The slow and calm approach manages anxiety, which is the #1 barrier to early speaking practice.
Anxiety management is vital, but how quickly are we expected to shift away from this crutch? If the beginner spends months perfecting "I am going to," the habit of segmenting words becomes entrenched. So when they finally do encounter rapid, natural speech, the shock is compounded. Because now they not only struggle with speed, but they also struggle to match the sounds they're hearing to the words they learned. The model really ought to acknowledge the reality of elisions earlier, maybe by demonstrating both the segmented and the natural forms side by side.
That is a valid point about the required speed of supplementation. But let's move on to the second major issue you raised, the utility of the inventory itself. You suggested the material overreaches on utility for a beginner.
It absolutely does. The dialogue shifts way too quickly from basic identity to highly specific minutia. Why must a beginner enumerate their family members' precise and diverse jobs, writer, doctor, teacher, chef, and then list detailed dislikes like olives, spicy food, waiting in long lines, and waking up very early? This level of enumeration trains the student to provide an extensive data dump, and pedagogically, that sacrifices fluency in core structures for the memorization of low-utility specific vocabulary.
That's an interesting critique about utility, but I would frame the intention differently. The depth of that information is precisely what makes the material sticky and memorable. It provides emotional context. It's not about the utility of the word chef. It's about the practice of describing a loved one's occupation. By covering multiple facets of personality, Max, the small, brown, happy dog, Luna, the black and white, quiet and sleepy cat, the dialogue models how to use simple language to express a nuanced personal connection.
But is the learner spending valuable time practicing how to say "my mother is a writer" when they should be practicing variations of common verb conjugations? We are talking about absolute beginners here. Time spent describing the cat's specific coat color and temperament is time not spent mastering simple requests or the core transactional language they would need for travel or just daily life.
But the material explicitly calls this section, "This is the fun part." It addresses the learner's emotional need to communicate their authentic self early on. If they only learn utilitarian phrases, they never feel invited to use the language for connection. Those detailed descriptions, they're memory hooks. You're going to remember the sleepy cat named Luna far more easily than just "I have a cat." That detail anchors the grammar to a real-world emotional component.
I can concede the memory hook benefit, but if the goal is conversation, why are they being taught to deliver a monologue? You said the goal is to initiate friendly interaction, but this structured list inhibits reciprocity. If I ask you to tell me about yourself and you deliver a 5-minute answer detailing your parents' jobs and your pizza preference without ever pausing for my reaction or for questions, well, it's not a conversation. It's an audition. Does training a student to deliver an extensive data dump truly build conversational skill or just advanced memorization skill?
That's a fair challenge regarding the balance between memorization and reciprocal conversation. However, the material does model how to use that foundational data for social action. I mean, consider the end of the dialogue where the hosts summarize their findings. I learned you are an art student who loves pasta and green, and you have a sleepy cat named Luna. They're modeling recall and active listening. They show how to use the information they've received as a basis for follow-up.
The summary is fine, but the interaction leading up to it is flawed. And this brings us to the third contention, the modeling of social interaction itself. The hosts offer this highly prescriptive advice, saying that sharing hobbies like I love to paint and listen to music will naturally lead to follow-up questions. What do you paint? And then invariably result in a new friendship. This is just setting an unrealistic expectation.
But for a beginner, that prescription is necessary. It gives them a tangible, low-risk path toward genuine social interaction. It helps them overcome that activation barrier of initiating contact.
And yet, this model relies almost exclusively on unrealistic positive reinforcement. They just pepper the exchange with, very cool, that's great, wonderful, perfect team. And while demonstrating politeness is important, this really limits the learner's exposure to the reality of conversational fillers, hedging language, or the essential skill of managing a mild disagreement, or even just a non-committal reply.
So you're arguing that the learner needs to be taught conversational ambiguity from day one?
I'm arguing they need exposure to the full spectrum of conversational reality. When we speak naturally, we use sounds like or phrases like, that's one way to look at it, or I suppose so, to manage the flow without being overly enthusiastic or formal. The reliance on exclusively positive, scripted affirmations, that's great. Every single time a new fact is stated, it masks the complex reality of managing nuanced conversational outcomes. The learner is only prepared for perfect, enthusiastic responses.
But the goal of this material is to make the initial experience non-threatening. When you're learning your first 10 sentences, positive reinforcement reduces the cognitive and emotional load. If the learner is immediately exposed to or mild disagreement, they might interpret that as a failure of communication, and that could lead them to retreat. The structured positivity ensures the beginner walks away feeling successful, which is the key driver for continued practice.
I accept the value of positive feedback. But the model could incorporate varied yet still polite fillers that bridge the gap between perfect team and an authentic exchange. For instance, using phrases like, that's interesting, or, oh, I see, provides slightly more realistic conversational texture without sacrificing encouragement. By avoiding all common fillers, the student enters a real conversation sounding unnaturally robotic or maybe overly enthusiastic.
The priority here is the clarity of the base instruction. Any filler or elision, even a polite one, introduces complexity that disrupts that slow and calm rhythm. This material is designed to deliver a pristine model, a blueprint that can then be corrupted, if you will, by reality later on. You can't corrupt something that isn't first pure.
That assumes purity is the goal, when I would argue usability is the goal.
And usability starts with confidence.
But confidence built on an artificial model collapses the moment the learner hears actual conversational speed.
Stepping back from our discussion, my core argument remains that this highly structured dialogue, with its focus on slow, deliberate delivery and a complete inventory of personal data, is a vital and comprehensive scaffolding tool. It prioritizes the learner's emotional needs by giving them that necessary confidence boost and a robust, accessible script. It makes the entry into the language friendly and navigable, fulfilling that core promise of a dialogue spoken devagar y con calma.
And in light of the critique of speed and structure, I still hold that while this dialogue is an excellent starting point for building vocabulary and basic grammar, it has to be clearly recognized as a highly controlled artificial learning environment. Its extreme simplification of pace, coupled with the reliance on sequential data dumping over true reciprocity, demands immediate and conscious supplementation. The student has to transition quickly to material that models the rapid, ambiguous, and connected nature of authentic English communication to truly achieve functional fluency beyond that introductory script.
And that, ultimately, reveals the inherent tension in foundational language pedagogy. We must balance the need for clear, stress-free instruction with the ultimate messy reality of spontaneous human conversation. The value really lies in understanding the strengths of such a carefully constructed model while remaining vigilant about its inevitable limitations. And there is clearly much more to explore in how we bridge that critical gap between the calm script and the complex street.